today we are combining a special guest, and also Jay is going to do the blockchain presentation. I want you to have speak a few words about it.
Is that background okay?
Yeah, that's good. So I know Jay is one of the guys that has been in the Valley. Every meetup, every event, he has a blockchain question.
True.
So hopefully he's made lots of money in Bitcoin and blockchain.
Last year it was all fintech from Jay, right?
Yeah.
And so
I've learned a lot. Let's put it that way.
And so after our Phoenix Mobile Festival, we reached out to him and we said, hey, we want to have a Bitcoin 101. Then he said, yeah, we'll do that. And then I saw that Howard was in town, and so I reached out to him. For people who don't know Howard, he's the CEO of, or founder of StockTwits. He's a crypto economist now, as he calls himself. And I've been following him on StockTwits, Twitter. Great personality on Twitter. Sarcasm plus lots of fun. And he's got lots of tips on what you should invest in and what you shouldn't do. And he's an investor in Robinhood, one of the apps that I love because it's $0 trading. And I asked him if he was going to stay in town on Thursday. He said, yeah, maybe. And then finally he said, okay, we'll do that. So we basically changed the agenda so we have a fireside chat with Howard and get to know him and ask questions, and then we'll get into the Bitcoin 101 stuff. So I'd like to welcome Howard.
That's good. Right here.
Yeah.
Not my check.
That's good. So for people that are
Can everybody hear us? Yeah. Okay.
So you're a Phoenix native, right?
I am born and raised in Toronto, Canada. And I came down to ASU in 1988.
That's long enough to call yourself a native.
Yeah, and then I moved away. How'd you get into this school? What's your age? I got to be careful what I say.
He's a prodigy.
I have to be careful. No swearing. Love the desert. I would say in 2008, during the real estate crash, I kind of got tired of the desert and driving my millennials to parties, half an hour everywhere you drive. And so we moved to Coronado, which is as far away from New York or Wall Street, the financial markets that I kind of am working on being a part of and disrupting.
And so what made you get into the financial world?
Mostly necessity. In 1987, I graduated from college at University of Western Ontario. It's in London, Ontario. And I didn't do well in school. I got a job at a stock brokerage office because you could take any job that you could get. And I would say 6 weeks later in October, the markets crashed. So I was last in, first out. And so that was my first inclination of the market, that it just goes, it crashes. And went back to school because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I loved the desert, and I got into Arizona State. So I ended up down in the desert. Did my MBA, and I went to a school called Thunderbird, which at the time was independent. Now I think it's owned by ASU. And I was Canadian, so I didn't have a green card. Or maybe we should turn it so I'm not looking, so I can look at everybody.
Sure.
Is that okay? So I didn't have a green card, so I would take any job to be in the States. This is 1990, before you were born. You weren't even. Parents might not have been born at that time. In Arizona was coming out of a major S&L crisis. The Keatings and bank loans, small thrifts. I didn't know anything about even though I had an MBA, I didn't know anything about anything. And I took the first job I could, which was a stockbroker. My job back then was, there was no internet. There was cards that you wrote stuff on and filed, and you cold called people. And so that's how I got into the financial markets, just to get a job. And they sponsored me to work towards my green card.
Well, what company was that?
Back then it was a company called Epler, Guerin and Turner, which was a regional brokerage. And in that 1990-91, as it turned out, it was lots of times luck happened. That was the actual great time to start in my business because we were coming out of a deep recession. We had gone into Kuwait, and we were watching the war on CNN back in those days, the bomb when we went into Iraq. And it just turned out to be a great time to be in Arizona. You know, Intel was just, you know, the chips back then was a 286 processor maybe, and so it was a great time. Compaq was, you know, a great company. Dell was coming on to be a great company, and so the PC revolution was starting. And so the stock markets and everything started to work, and then coming out of the recession of 90 in Phoenix, you then went on to an 18-year boom in real estate. So it was hard not to make money. So, you know, a lot of it is just timing and being in the right place and staying with something. In the United States, it's a gift to just do something well for 20 years. You're going to make money.
And what prompted you get into the technology component of it, the fintech, as we call it nowadays? Was it the Bloomberg terminals that you fell in love with, or when did that happen?
No, I've never used a Bloomberg. It's supposedly an amazing machine. Anybody who uses a Bloomberg loves it. Basically, Bloomberg's a chat product wrapped around structured data. And at the time when Michael started, it was the structured data was having bond prices that nobody had. And you know, it was a great company, but chat is what really mattered. Bloomberg probably had the first social network. Well, cigarettes were the first social network because people would smoke and hang around together and talk or around the campfire. And Bloomberg had the first probably technological social network in the sense that it was exclusive. You had to pay $2,000 or whatever it was back in the time to join. But because you could afford $2,000, it was a pretty good network because there's no schmendricks in the platform. You had to be somebody to be on the network. So that's why it's one of the biggest private companies in the world. They charge for the social network. Now, we know social networks is free. You go on Snapchat, you go on Instagram, go on Facebook, Twitter, StockTwits. It's free, which is amazing that Bloomberg can survive in a free world. So I think part of what I talk about is how crazy it's been that no one's been able to disrupt Bloomberg, even though products are free. So there's a lot to learn from studying history and this private company in New York. But it really is fascinating to me that you could, in a world where everything's free, Bloomberg's charging $2,000. And so I've been part of trying to not beat Bloomberg, but oh my God, there's so much there that even with Google and with Twitter and with StockTwits and all the news and media, you can't disrupt something. People are paying $2,000 a month for a machine, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and you brought up StockTwits. Could you talk about how that idea you had? Obviously, Twitter was there, but there was nothing for people that wanted to be interested in stocks. How did you go about doing that?
Well, I had started a company in 2006. When I saw YouTube back in 2006, it was just, if you didn't have cats, YouTube wasn't important because it was all cat videos. Now it's obviously one of the greatest products of all time, but at the time it was this is silly. It's just people, doing filming their cats. And my original idea was to make CNBC to create a business network on YouTube. And I had no experience in media, but I was a consumer of CNBC and I couldn't afford a Bloomberg, so I was fascinated by the world of how do people invest. If I can't pay $2,000 a month, how do I compete with all these people? So my first idea was to build CNBC on YouTube, just a 24-hour business news channel cobbled together on YouTube, and started one show, 3 minutes a day, called Wall Strip. And long story short, we didn't know what we were doing. I'm not a media person, but the idea was to create 1 3-minute show a day about the stocks and the stock market. And 6 months later, CBS, the media company, acquired our company. We hadn't done about 60 or 70 shows, and 6 months later, we were the first company ever acquired by a major, first like show ever acquired by a major media company. And so that was my little claim to fame back in 2007. And so I never got to like complete the idea, but we were happy to, it was my first big check where, you know, some idea of mine somebody else wanted. So it's a really great experience. And so I'm working at CBS, and Twitter, the first time I saw Twitter, there was no iPhones, it was a BlackBerry-based world, BlackBerry economy back then in 2007. And everybody was walking around bumping into each other with the QWERTY keyboard, and that was like the greatest thing of all time. And Twitter comes along, and it was this way to exchange, you know, I went to the bathroom, I'm eating here, I did this, and it was very few people on it. But Fred Wilson was a great investor in New York, and he had been an investor in Wall Street, so he was bugging me to try it, and I was like, I don't really get why I would tell people where I am. I still don't like telling people exactly where I am. So I never understood location. I mean, I understand location is important, but that didn't interest me. What interests me is people sharing ideas in real time, and Twitter was that. But they didn't have they weren't interested in the financial markets, and that's what I was interested in. So my idea was to do Twitter for stocks. And so I left CBS and started StockTwits, which was built on top of Twitter originally on their API, and it took off. Part of the thing was I created with the team the $, which is called the hashtag now. So if you're on Twitter and you see someone's talking about Apple, or let's say Google, for example, GOOG is a language. Like if you trade stocks, GOOG means Google, and so we needed a way to come up with a way to contextually help people that wanted to talk about Google the company, Google the stock, instead of just Google esoterically. So we came up with the $, and built that on top of Twitter, just like the hashtag. So we called it the hashtag. And about 6 months later, in 2008, I was like, well, this isn't going to work. We got to either build our own platform if Twitter is not going to, because Twitter will kill us at some point. So that led to this path of creating StockTwits over the last 9 years. Now we're probably the largest social network for investors and traders. It's very great. It's a pulse. It's basically just a social pulse of what people are thinking about with respect to stocks. And so it's really easy to follow tickers, and it's basically a global chat room for people that love stocks. And that's simply it. All the lessons I've learned, all the mistakes I've made along making this brand happen are like hours and hours of Arizona business case study reviews. But long story short, it's kind of a happy ending. We're like this thriving social network. We're not big. We're probably, but we're big in terms of finance. Bloomberg's probably 300,000 customers, and but they pay $2,000 a month. We're well over that, but people don't pay us. So our dilemma is trying to figure out how to get people to pay without blasting them with ads. And so that's the business model dilemma. But in finance, people will pay for ideas. So we have lots of stuff working, and so we're a thriving, multi-million person community. And that team's only 18 people, and they're all in New York. I'm just chairman, and we hired a CEO last year who's doing a good job. And I now get to invest. So I invest in financial startups.
What are some of the investments that you've done with all the money that you have made from those exits? I know Robinhood was one. Can you tell us about that?
Has anybody heard of Robinhood or traded a stock?
Yeah, I like it a lot.
If not,
Tried
install
using
it
it.
while he's talking about it, so you can buy something right now.
So when I was starting out, and I didn't know much about the stock market, the internet revolution happened, and we had companies like E-Trade and Schwab and TD Ameritrade and Daytech back in the day, and Scottrade. And so there were all these exciting ways because of the internet for people to blow their brains out trading stocks. Basically, we were handing people, put your money in a bank and trade stocks. And that wasn't that long ago in 1998 to 2001, the first internet bubble. So you had these multi-billion-dollar brands being built, Super Bowl commercials, millions of customers, and everybody was trying to get rich off the internet. And that crashed, but these brands survived. And flash forward to when I was trying to disrupt CNBC or create a business network myself, and no technological experience, more was just savvy around clever ways to hack networks, is I felt there would need to be this next generation of products. You know, if you think about E-Trade and Schwab, they're fantastic brands, but legacy systems, very structured in terms of how they think about their customers, and very bloated around software. And so my bet, when I sold Wall Strip, if I can create a company that CBS buys, then it's kind of like once you see behind the curtain, you realize that nobody knows anything. So I think the biggest mystery of business is what's the name of the movie with the Tin Man and the Lion? Wizard of Oz. So the Wizard of Oz, what makes that movie amazing? Like chasing the wizard, and then they see that the wizard's an idiot or hiding up behind a curtain. And that's basically business too. You can study all the books, and you can go to as many classes, but until you have to hire your first employee and fire your first employee, or hire an engineer and they don't know how to code, but until that really happens to you in the real world, you don't know. And so the same thing with trading. The reason that was a phenomenon in 1997 to 2000, stocks were going up. There was no going down. Your taxi driver is talking about stocks. Your mother-in-law is talking, and everybody's making money. And we're seeing that now play out again in crypto. But then the markets crashed and people got sick of it, and these legacy brands were holding on to their existing customers, waiting for the next big thing. And, along comes YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, forgetting even MySpace because they flamed out, but all these great social networks that would eventually, during that time, make it really easy to onboard customers. I mean, in the beginning, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube didn't care about anything. They just wanted you to use their products. And so it was a really great gold rush in 2006 to 2008 because these networks wanted you to use their products. There was basically no rules on their APIs, and you could grow your business on top of them. Flash forward to today, it's very hard to grow your business on top of them because Facebook knows exactly what a customer that's willing to buy a wedding ring right now costs, so the arbitrage is taken out of that. But back in 2007, 2008, I wanted to help recreate the next E-Trade, CNBC, Schwab, etc. And so I dedicated my time to thinking this through. And when we started StockTwits, we started having all these people talk about stocks, and I realized that they should be able to trade from here. If they're already chatting at the watering hole, shouldn't they be able to swipe and trade? So the vision came around to start our fund, Social Leverage, which is now on our third fund. But the idea was to invest in the future of finance and this next generation of kids that will have their first E-Trade moment or their first profit from an idea. And I believe really strongly, it's important that kids learn another language. And some kids are great at math, some kids are great at English and writing, some kids are great at certain languages, but the markets are the biggest, most global language of all. If you understand how to read markets, you speak a language and you can do that from anywhere in the world. So that's fascinating to me. And I didn't know how to explain it well or maybe get enough of a following, but that's the way I perceived the world happening. There's English, which is, you go to Europe now and a lot of people speak English. 30 years ago when I would go to Paris, it was like, if you didn't speak English, you were screwed. And so English is kind of one out other than Chinese, but there's this other global language, which is crypto, which is people speaking the language of money. And that's what Bitcoin is. It's like, money is a powerful social network. And crypto's unlocked that. I wouldn't have predicted that crypto was the thing. I just wanted to help people learn about investing. And so when I saw Robinhood, it was just simply, the founders were willing to do the hard work, get licensing, get their SEC licensing deal with FINRA, and they built this beautiful app that allowed people to trade for free. And people thought, free? How are they going to make money? And the number one thing is like, how are people going to make money? I think Robinhood just had that right attitude and the right design and the right timing, and executed very well. And they built a beautiful app that had an API, and StockTwits is a social network that doesn't have trading, and the two work beautifully together. So you can be on Robinhood and trade, or you can be on StockTwits and swipe right and connect your account to Robinhood and trade. So we're at this, whereas a legacy system, E-Trade customers do not ever, God willing, want to have one of their customers talk to a Schwab customer. And that's the breakdown, right? Everybody's building these silos to protect their customers, and especially in finance. Once you get a customer, you don't want them to leave. You'll do anything. And so that is what's holding back. That's what holds back progress. Everybody's accumulating users and trying to hoard them and milk them. And with APIs and with software, and now as the world evolves, everything needs to talk to each other. So that was a bet, and it's paying off. We invested in Robinhood in 2012 or 2013, and it's a multi-billion-dollar, it's a billion-dollar plus brand. And I've also invested in many other fintech companies. One is eToro, which, has anybody ever bought a crypto here?
No.
Wow.
Looking
Okay.
at.
So, but you've bought stuff on Zynga or gaming, just the gaming crowd. But
Yeah.
so crypto is just basically, I'd like to explain it as like Facebook without employees and without servers. It's just, what would Facebook look like if you couldn't like anything, and if you couldn't share a photo or share a political message, but if you could just be connected to everybody and only do for one thing, sending money or sending, that's the like. Is, I owe you $40, and I'll send it to you over the new Facebook, which is Bitcoin. So that's the way I like to think about it. If it really works, that's pretty cool, because you have all the possibilities of Facebook with none of the nonsense. And the goal isn't to sell ads on this next generation of thing. The goal is to have commerce. What if I could build my blog on the next internet, which doesn't have to worry about monetizing itself from ads, but could just, the hardcore users would just get a toll if they come 10 times a month, and machines would take care of everything. So that's kind of, even though I'm not a technologist, that's the way I like to think about things. As a user, or as someone someone wants to start a business, take away all the friction. So, that's what's exciting about fintech today. It's not just so much for quants and geeks; it's for changing the world.
And so, switching subjects to Bitcoin, because you brought it up, what time frame did you get fascinated and jump into the Bitcoin craze? Right now, like me, I just got in last week and learning about Bitcoin, and said, hey, Jay should be somebody that can present so we can understand and maybe buy our first Bitcoin, or part of 1/10th or 100th or 1,000th of Bitcoin. Right?
Yeah, so I don't even know if I'm still excited about it. I'm excited about the idea that people are learning and experimenting. So to me, Bitcoin is I can't fully explain it other than theoretically, based on the software and the code, has limited supply. What always bugged me about commodities is it felt rigged, in the sense that we don't know how much oil there is. We can speculate. We don't know how much gold there is. And think about what gold really is. I don't really understand it, and who put the value. It's thousands of years of stories and death and destruction to it's a perceived value. Right? And I never liked commodities because I didn't understand, okay, I don't live in Africa, I don't know what the supply is. Say in Canada or Africa they discover a mine tomorrow and the supply is up 30%. What is it? No one's told, it feels like a rigged game. But, that's, yet, my father-in-law will sit around with us while we're talking about Bitcoin and call Bitcoin a fraud. And I'm like, you can't even explain gold, and you're calling the next thing a fraud. So the basis of Bitcoin is this idea that software is written, and it's kind of like the Bible, And there's this trust built up over time that people have looked at the code, all the engineers have looked at code, and there's only going to be 21 million coins, and they're going to, and it gets harder to mine those coins, but you don't have to murder people necessarily to get those coins. And so the early adopters were places where the dark web is, and I happen to be lucky to be in Israel in 2010 speaking, and I didn't plan on investing in Israel, and this entrepreneur got on stage just like in a room like this and presented this company called eToro, and it wasn't Bitcoin, it was just Forex trading, and it's kind of like what Robinhood would soon become, but this is back in 2008. He started the company. In 2010, when I saw him, it was just a silly Forex trading site, but he had a great vision, and he was the first person that mentioned the word Bitcoin to me, and I think Bitcoin was at 12 cents at the time, and I didn't know, and he was like, Howard, you should, I don't have an Israeli accent, but imagine this in an Israeli, you should buy Bitcoin. And I said, just leave me alone, I'm on vacation, and I should have, but he understood Bitcoin, because it wasn't an American thing, it was like someone who lived on the dark web and understood commerce and understood the system a little better, and so he eToro is now a multi-$100 billion company and they're in 150 countries. So he was the first person that did it. The first person that made me really think about it, and I'll walk through my thesis, is, I kept hearing about it from Mark Andreessen and Chris Dixon and all these people, including Yoni, still from eToro, and I was like, okay. And then you watch it go up, and you go from 12 cents to $1, and you see it go to $20 and $30, and you just don't really understand. No one really that you trust is talking about it, and you can't get your head around it because that's not my business. And finally, Fred Wilson invested in Coinbase, and Fred's a pretty open and great investor. And so my thesis was, if it was okay for Fred to invest, and at the same time the banks are calling it a fraud, and my father-in-law is calling it a fraud, and J.B. Diamond's calling it a fraud, there's a big gap between when, okay, Yoni showed it to me and I didn't believe him, but then when Fred, who's a great investor, talks about it, the leap of faith is, okay, he has a history of understanding networks, and so I felt, okay, if he's crazy enough to do this, I can do this. And by the way, I can do this without having to start a company. I could go on and get a wallet in the cloud, on Coinbase, and do the same thing. So that made it easier, and I'm like, oh, well, people are crazy. The guy's giving away free information. I'll just follow what Fred does. Because generally when the VCs talk about it, you can't get into their deals. So Bitcoin's the first thing where they talk about it, and you can do exactly what they did, which leads to how the world works, And if we watch the Tour de France, it's all about drafting. Everybody gets in a pack, and they go much faster because they're covering thousands of miles in 15 days, and it's all about the yellow jersey. In the investing world, or in nature, the yellow jersey is not as important as being surviving, and that's getting as close to the yellow jersey as possible without getting killed. And so in the real world, you don't have to win. You can be in 10th place. You just don't want to be in last place. So the way I look at markets is, you follow people that leave big footprints, and you draft behind them. And so that's kind of the philosophy. So once Fred was doing it, you have to get over the leap of faith. I can't believe I didn't buy something at 12 cents. Now it's at $100. How could I possibly make money? And sure enough, Bitcoin, I don't know, from when he's written about it and explaining it to people, maybe not well, but well enough, it's gone from 100, 17,000 today. So, the leap of faith is to follow smart people, which is, I think I can teach, whether you're into finance or engineering or whatever, is to find a network. I use Twitter and StockTwits to find smart people. You don't have to invent everything, and to get as close to them as possible without annoying them and getting eaten yourself, and then follow along. If you pull up a picture tonight of a great white shark, any image, Google image, and you look at a great white shark, I don't know if you've ever noticed the fish that swim underneath it, pilot fish. They're like zebras, but they're fish. And those fish, no one talks about them, but they have a pretty good life because the shark kills everything for them. They feed, and as long as they don't get too far away from the shark, they can live a pretty bountiful life in nature as a small fish. So that's the way I think about learning. And that's why social networks and these network effects are so important. They're very hard to measure. They're very hard to put a value on, which is what frustrates Wall Street and which frustrates people that talk about these things that don't want to dig in, because it's very hard to decide what a network's worth. And but that's the beauty of the world we live in. You can hate it or you can embrace it.
So coming back to Bitcoin, Bitcoin was designed as a currency, but now people are looking at it like an asset. What is your take on it?
Yeah, try not to get all, because then once you start debating this, then it becomes CNN versus Fox, which is what they want you to do. What you really need to do is just, like I said, surround yourself with smart people that have a history of calling this right. I don't think the argument is about currency versus commodity. It's a behavioral / supply-demand thing. And it is what it is, you know. Right now it's expensive, so people are hoarding it. Back when it was $10, we were giving them away as tips, and and people were mad at us. You know, when Yoni at eToro, he was very smart. They talked today about like stimulating the economy by just giving people money. And in a way, that's what Bitcoin was. It was the world's way to give people that didn't have money who were believers. Kind of like a religion meets finance, in the sense that you don't have to dig it, you just have to like accept it. And so all the early adopters were just throwing Bitcoins around. You know the stories about pizza, but like paying our caddies and tipping people. And people thought you were a cheap bastard if you gave them a Bitcoin, because they were like, well, I got to open a wallet to get my Bitcoin. And so there's all these there's all these things around the system, because thousands of people that we were giving tips to probably never even opened a wallet to get their tip. So the lesson there is nobody knows, but you have to really play with these things and then kind of keep your mind open.
With the advent of Bitcoin and how much it has gone up, there's like so many other cryptocurrencies, Litecoin and Dogecoin, and if I go to coincap.io, I see an endless list of coins out there, lots more ICOs. What's your take on that? Is it lots of people trying to, I've heard lots of ICOs happening that people lost lots of money too, because they don't know what that currency is supposed to be doing, etc.
Yeah, it's kind of the Wild West. Where there's money flows con men, and buyer beware. There's a famous saying, buyer beware. And unfortunately, I think in the United States we've had these great systems, and we have this great economy, and we have this great kind of founding, it's a young country, and we're trying to protect everybody from themselves, which sounds great on paper until this is the fight right now. Are we over-regulated? Are we under-regulated? And Bitcoin comes along, and no one, you got people on, you got Trump versus, you got red versus blue. In a world where red versus blue doesn't even matter if you got a B on your shirt and your Bitcoin, because while they're blathering, the whole world's doing commerce on this weird platform that has no boundaries. So I try not to get caught up in what this is or what this isn't. It's kind of like if you watch Jurassic Park, the minute the movie starts that the Tyrannosaurus Rex is going to eat a white person. And it turns out to be the banker. I mean, you could kind of tell it was going to eat the banker. But it's a storytelling, right? Like they find a way. Like we have the perfect system to contain the dinosaur. We're only going to breed males or females, whatever they were going to do. Of course, in the movie, and you see it at the fence. They put up a fence. He doesn't know the tension. And the real world's kind of like that too. Like nature is like you can put up as many fences as you want. At some point, the pressure. We don't know when it's going to pop, but the pressure popped. Probably 2008. Well, everybody was talking about the mortgage crisis. The hackers and the coders were not sneaking. They were building something to fix the system. And you look up 10 years later, and this is what the financial crisis brought on itself. So yeah, Goldman survived. People didn't go to jail, but they're in their own demise in many ways. It just takes a long time. So if you've ever been in a lawsuit, you realize, hopefully you aren't, But if you ever been to realize, like, these things go on forever. It's like, if you hate Trump, it's like, how does he survive so long? But the process takes a long time. And same thing with technology. These things take a long time. There's no overnight success. But once that network grabs hold, it's really hard to value it. So the whole thing is to just kind of keep reading and keep playing with these new toys that everybody's making fun of. And hopefully, you only need one good idea or catch one good trend to really change your life.
I'd like to open it up for
Yeah.
some questions. And I've been asking a lot of questions, but you can ask him on Twitter and he'll respond right away.
Yeah.
You guys have any questions? Bitcoin or fintech or anything related?
So are we in the bubble of Bitcoin?
I think we're at a state when my nephew's talking about tripling his money. He's 23, he's got his first job. I'm excited for him. I think we can only educate them. We can't tell them what to do. It's like saying you shouldn't smoke. Well, we killed smoking, and now vaping is bigger than smoking could ever be. And so I don't think you can put these things in a box. I think our best shot is educating people. You know, there's a sea in Israel called the Dead Sea, and it's full of salt. And when if you go to the Dead Sea, just before you get in, they go, hey, if you've shaved this morning or you have a cut, it's gonna, the salt will find the wound. And sure enough, kids go in, kids have shaved or they have a cut, and they go in the water and they go, fuck, it hurts. And that's the same thing with money and with behavior. You can put up all these rules. Same with smoking or whatever. It's like they thought they killed smoking, and now everybody's vaping. They can put up all these rules, but that only pushes things in different directions. And so with this bubble, yeah, we're in a bubble. I don't think you can stop the bubble. I think it'll pop. I have no idea why it'll pop or when. And so people need to moderate their behavior. It's not free money. It's basically a privilege, and people are going to start treating it like a right. So at that point where the privilege in the game becomes like, oh, this is easy, we're getting closer, but I have no idea.
Howard, there's a big craze around ICOs, initial coin offerings, and it seems like a lot of people view an initial coin offering like a traditional IPO, only easier. Have you looked at any exit strategies from ICOs, initial coin offerings? Because it looks like that's water's kind of muddied.
Yeah. The ICO is, just quickly, an IPO is initial public offering, and that was the way to help companies raise money. You would, if you were a successful company, the bankers would come in, they would issue shares, and you could sell some shares to the public to raise cash to go buy companies and grow your business. That market dried up in 2008 for all the dirty stuff that we all were part of. The rules changed and it became expensive to go public. Then along comes, if you really look at it as evolution, I don't think ICOs came out of the dark. They came out of 2008, but then further they came out of the fact that along comes Kickstarter and Indiegogo. And so now if I want to create a cooler or iPhone case, I could do a video, put it up on Kickstarter. If I had a good network, or if I got a couple of lucky breaks from some links or some referrals, I could raise 10 grand to make my iPod case. I never bought into that stuff. I was like, why am I going to give you? I could just give money throw money in the street. I could just give charity. Okay, cool, you got a product. But that became a phenomenon. I mean, people fund Kickstarters all day. It just wasn't for me. It just was like, wait a minute. If I'm going to put my money on something, shouldn't I get something? I know it's not going to work, and I'll probably never get shipped my product, and good way to go for trying. But say it does work, shouldn't I get some upside in that? And so Kickstarter's blowing up. There's all these copycats, and there's all this crowdfunding. And to me, crowdfunding's ridiculous because the ones that work, people should be able to participate in. And that's what IPOs were. So ICOs are just an evolution of what crowdfunding was. It's like, at least the ones that work, I should be able to have some stub that says, okay, if there's a market for this, at least the paper that I got along with the product is something that I could trade for money. And that's basically the evolution to me of what ICOs. If Kickstarter had just done one more thing different and gone and fought the SEC and crowdfunding and said, listen, anything over this amount, we're going to give this little, we'll call it a certificate. And if our cooler or our app does amazing, the people that invested or gave me money early can make a few bucks. And I think the tipping point there was when, and again, I can't prove it, I'm just like looking back at history, I would say, Oculus gets bought for $2 billion and they started as a Kickstarter product. You'd feel like a dummy if all you got was the Oculus. If you gave Oculus their first money on Kickstarter, shouldn't you get something? Why should the venture capitalists and the founders just make all the money? So these are the things that happen in the world that create the inertia, that creates entrepreneurs and lawyers and whatever to come up with the next generation. So it's just evolution of IPOs and bad behavior, and then good ideas that aren't perfect that lead to ICOs. ICOs are going to evolve too, and we'll probably revert back to something more where, I don't know where it ends, but I think we need to move back. It happened pretty quick, and I think we'll probably move back towards more of a centralized way of trying to organize these things. It's a really exciting time to be doing this stuff. Does that help at all?
Yeah.
But I think the markets aren't as deep as people would like, so there's just a lot of bad paper out there, a lot of bad ideas. The markets just aren't that deep. People here are smart people, and they don't even know how to do this stuff yet. So I think there's a lot of false hope in the system. But you need this false, crazy hope to get over the hump. You need enough people storming the castle for it to so that's exciting. So I hope it doesn't end because we need these changes, but it's going to be ugly. The longer it goes, the uglier it will be when it pops. Doesn't mean it will pop, it just means there's going to be another side of this.
Real quick question I have. I recently heard about Bitcoin futures starting up. Do you think in the long run that could affect negatively for Bitcoin?
I try not to comment on it. These are complicated mathematicians and market makers that do these things. I think I look at it two ways. I have no idea, so therefore I don't play with things that I don't really understand. But I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's good. I think it just adds a layer of complexity and confusion to these things. It'd be nice if the world was just lollipops and bubblegum, but people will try and make money on top of these things. So I would say we've added a layer of complexity to something that was really beautiful. Right? It starts turning Facebook into this thing where they got to make ads off it. Bitcoin was this beautiful thing that everybody made fun of, but it was changing people's lives, and now all the animals are on top and trying to make a buck off the system. So I would say it's an extra time to be careful, and the professionals have entered the building. Does that help?
Yes.
Hey there. So we're educating people at ASU to try and bring them up to the space where they can interact with blockchain and such. And something that scares us, as well as some of the advisors that we're working with, is how to get people into the space. There's a lot of investment interest in the space. And what are some things you think some new investors should know coming into the space to keep themselves safe and be rational, like you were saying?
You can't teach people to be rational, and you can't. So I think there's just disclosure issues. You can't make this stuff safe. This is the Wild West, When they used to, Fred Wilson was telling a story to me about, if we look at Wells Fargo, we hate them. The company survived. It's basically a criminal organization, I like to call it. It's like they should be. It's like the mob, but if you think about Wells Fargo, a stagecoach is their logo. Because that's how money used to get transferred across the West. Okay, let's do it. Here's an idea. We're going to, middle of the night, we're going to put all our gold in a stagecoach, and 3 horses are going to climb over a mountain. And there's no risk. And that's how money was transferred back then, to do payrolls and stuff. Of course, people were going to get robbed. And so now we're in this next phase where Bitcoin is. It's like, yeah, it's fun to joke about how much money I've made, but I have no one. If I get hacked, I have no one to complain to. There's no structure to this business. So that's kind of broken. And blockchain is another level on top of all this. So I think we're probably way ahead of. There's a lot of money flowing into space that doesn't have enough good ideas, and the infrastructure doesn't really work well enough. Bitcoin's kind of acting like gold. I mean, if you have a lot of Bitcoin, you got to take it off the web and hide it in your safety deposit box on a key. That seems to have defeated the purpose of having Bitcoin. So we're just way behind. So I don't know. I think I'm avoiding it. I still like the idea of consumer goods and things I can touch and feel. So with blockchain, it's a buzzword, and I'm starting to understand what it is, but I don't know. And I think it'll remove costs from the system, much like AWS removed costs from starting a company. So I think blockchain, the concept, makes sense, but I don't know who's going to make money from it, because I think it'll help corporate America once they get religion about it. I don't know it'll help mom and pop that thinks that they should sell everything and build a blockchain business. So, but I'm not good at explaining it well enough, other than that I would think corporate America, they're going to figure out ways to believe this, and I think it's more of a cost savings and a profit thing than it is a revolution. Yes?
So you were talking about complexity and gobs of money. At what point do you expect the government to want to dive in there and get some taxes out of that?
Well, they're going to get, I have a Coinbase account, so they're going to get, I'm going to get 1099 up the wazoo. Right on time, just like ever. So I think the government's in the game. They could be, Satoshi could be Donald Trump. That would not be good for Bitcoin. But I'm saying, like, the government theoretically, if you're a conspiracy theorist, and 10% of me is like conspiracy theorist, because I think everything's rigged. We're all part of an elaborate game, sponsored by Ambien, but we're all part of the game. And so I don't try and overthink this, but I think the government, there's higher powers, that are, and hopefully not, but I think that the government will work with these. It's inevitable. Like, I want my blog, it's a simple thing. If I write, I would like to get paid without selling an ad. I think I should get paid by my users in a seamless way if they love me. And we're seeing all these companies being started, and Patreon and all these like different things where you can pay the person directly, but there's still a middleman. The toll roads for the internet are interesting, and if you keep going through the same route, pay a little bit. But I should also be able to see all the routes, and that's the net neutrality thing. So it's complicated. I kind of think that you're going to get screwed. Every one of us gets screwed every day. Guy cuts us off, we're overpaying for this. We hate this professor that we're paying for college for. We're all going to get screwed. I think the people that kind of take a step back and just try and, serenity now, the whole thing, in Seinfeld mode, is you kind of laugh at this stuff and try and understand that the system is rigged. How do I work within a rigged system? I think success becomes a little easier once you stop fighting the system and start like embracing the cosmos. It's kind of like, I can't believe I'm saying stuff like that, but it really is working. For the greatest investors, they stop worrying about like who's, and I read smart people and they're like, okay, net neutrality. I really can't, they've confused me to the point where I don't even know what it is. That's pretty amazing. Like, I've given up trying to think. I would assume that if Verizon and AT&T are colluding to screw us, that this will be now the impetus for Google and all these other companies to figure out a way to screw them. They'll screw themselves. But along the way, we're all getting nickel and dime on our Verizon bill. We hate them. We can't wait till they fail. And so they'll get their comeuppance, and it may not be while we're alive. And so you have to start, when you're dealing in corporate years, it's hard to outlive them. Yeah. So you have to learn to like swim with them. Hopefully that helps.
Thanks.
Yes.
Yeah, I was wondering if you see any, opinions on if there'll be any consolidation of cryptocurrencies, potentially if the government decides it wants to have one, and say, all your citizens are required to use it so we can track everything for tax purposes and whatnot.
Yeah, I think you'll see a lot of localized currencies. We have it with Starbucks cards. It's kind of a crypto thing. It's just, I think, there's a company called CLLU, that's creating local currencies, so crypto localized. I think the governments will be in this game as well. So I think the consolidation happens around the exchanges, like Coinbase. Maybe Google or Facebook will buy Coinbase, and that'll be their way of participating, right? I always try and take a step back and go, wait a minute, Coinbase is a huge company growing really fast, but like they're not that big, and the product's not that great, and I'm getting ripped off on fees. And Facebook could just buy it and give it away for free, and or Amazon. I mean, there's all kinds of crazy stuff that could happen. So I think there'll be I think you're right. I think your thought is probably right. There's going to be massive consolidation. I know we got Alibaba and Tencent, who are going to sneak in and do what they can. They just took 12% of Snapchat. So what Wall Street thinks is ugly, China thinks is beautiful. And so you got to keep an open mind. I think there's going to be all kinds of weird acquisitions and consolidation in this space. Okay. Yep.
Last question.
Excuse me. So Bitcoin being a cryptocurrency, do you see other cryptocurrencies as valuable but not valued as high as they could be potentially? Something that we all could buy at this point?
It's like diamonds and other things. I mean, Bitcoin is the one that people have spent the most time on now, so they've been grinding the code and thinking about it, and so it has the most value today. But Bitcoin is not, like Coinbase is giving my identity to the government, so that's lost the value. It's basically just E-Trade at many levels because I'm paying taxes on my gains. In the rest of the world, they don't think about any of this. They're just thinking if you're running a retail store, you're getting paid in Venezuela, you're like, oh my God, I wish I could have something that just didn't go down 80% by the time I cash my check, and that's Bitcoin, right? They get the fever because they're doing it for a completely different reason. They just don't want to get paid in their local currency. So I think that you're getting into speculation, and really, if you're really into that, there's tons of them that are interesting. You know, there's Zcash, which is like Bitcoin with more security and keeps your identity clean. There's just, I'm not geeky enough to know which one, and in the end, you can overthink this till you're blue in the face to try and figure it out. But there's all this magic happening in Bitcoin, anyways. So it depends how deep you want to go, but I'm not good enough to dissect all that yet. All right.
Let's give a round of applause to Howard. We'll take a quick break and then we'll have
Something to bought with it. So,
you
for
can
the
buy
holiday
Bitcoin with that.
gift. Yeah.
Thank you.
For the holiday.
All right, everybody.
Yeah, I can give you this. Thank you for coming.
Oh, and it's easy to reach me. My email is howard@Lindzon. You can share it on StockTwits and Twitter. It's easy to ask me a question.
You want to stay? I want to stay for a little bit.
Okay. Okay, do you have anything for us with Howard?
Sure.
Just post it on our Meetup.
We have something too with Howard. That's good.
You can post it on the Meetup.
Where do you want it?
Yeah.
Right there? Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3, sit there. All right, one more. 1, 2, 3. Ethereum.
Yeah, can we take a selfie with you and push it up? Oh, for the whole group. Let's do that.